Welcome, dear friend, to Sanctum of the Soft Descent, a quiet journey designed to lead your spirit into a haven of profound calm and gentle repose. It is a true delight that you have chosen to spend this quiet interlude with us, and if the gentle magic you find here resonates with your heart, we would be so pleased if you considered liking this recording and subscribing to our channel for more whispers of tranquility. Before our story truly begins, we shall share a soft moment of breathing together, a gentle preparation for the peace that awaits in the Vale. Should you wish to drift directly into the rustling quiet of the petals, you will find the chapter timestamps nestled helpfully in the description below. Do find a place where you feel most at ease, perhaps allowing your body the simple comfort of sinking a little more deeply into the soft support beneath you, as if you were settling onto a bed of the Vale's own Empath-Moss, feeling its gentle warmth begin to cradle you. You might adjust your coverings, or perhaps a pillow, creating a small, warm haven where only peace may enter. This time is a gift you give yourself, a soft space to let the day's gentle hum fade into the quiet anticipation of the Vale, where luminous petals drift like silent blessings, and the air itself seems to hold a tender sigh. Now, if it feels right for you, let us welcome a breath, soft and easy, drawing in the imagined scent of honeyed blossoms through your nose, feeling it fill you with a gentle lightness. And then a slow, quiet exhale through your mouth, like the Vale itself breathing out a sigh of contentment, releasing with it any lingering echoes of the day. With each breath that follows, perhaps you can feel your shoulders softening, your brow smoothing, a sense of warmth spreading gently through your limbs, as if the very air around you is a comforting embrace. Imagine, if you will, the soft glow of countless petals painting the air with hues of rose and gentle lavender, each one a tiny beacon of serenity. Should your thoughts wander, as thoughts sometimes do, like little clouds drifting across a peaceful sky, simply acknowledge them with a gentle nod and then softly guide your attention back to the rhythm of your breath or to the quiet sound of my voice. There is nothing to achieve here, no place to hurry to, only the offering of peace and the gentle invitation to rest. Feel the quiet pulse of the Vale beginning to resonate within you, a slow, steady rhythm that carries away the need for doing and settles you into simply being. Allow yourself to become part of the harmony that waits. As the story of Valery and the Vale of Sighing Petals unfold, let its gentle wonders enfold you, guiding you softly, tenderly, towards the peaceful shores of sleep, where stillness breathes and dreams are woven from light. Chapter 1. Entering the Vale's quiet embrace. It was not a sound precisely that led Valery towards the hidden way, but rather a profound and gentle quietude that seemed to call out from amidst the low rolling hills, a silence so complete it hummed with a resonance deeper than any melody. For many days, perhaps even weeks, though time had begun to soften and blur like watercolors in a gentle rain, she had walked, leaving behind a world that, while not unkind, was filled with a ceaseless murmur of small activities, of soft comings and goings that had slowly, imperceptibly frayed the edges of her spirit. She sought a place where the world held its breath, if only for a little while, and it was this unspoken wish, this deep yearning for utter stillness, that seemed to quicken her steps as she noticed a barely discernible path, less a track made by feet and more a subtle parting in the tall dun-colored grasses, as if the land itself had sighed and opened a way. The path, such as it was, began to descend almost immediately, winding gently downwards like a ribbon unfurling into a soft green bowl. With each step, the air grew perceptibly softer, cooler, and carried upon it the faintest, most delicate fragrance, a blend of something akin to night-blooming jasmine, the comforting sweetness of warm honey, and the clean, earthy scent of damp soil after a sun shower. It was a perfume that promised solace, a scent that spoke of hidden blooming things and ancient undisturbed earth. The gentle ambient sounds of the wider world, the distant call of a bird, the sigh of wind through faraway trees, the soft rustle of her own passage, began to recede, absorbed by the growing stillness until only the quiet pad of her own worn leather boots on the soft earth remained, a comforting rhythm in the immense and welcoming hut. Deeper still the path led, curving around a shoulder of moss-covered rock that felt cool and smooth beneath her questing fingers, its surface damp with clinging dew that sparkled like tiny fallen stars in the diffused light filter in from somewhere far above. And then the veil revealed itself, not in a sudden vista, but as a slow, gentle unfolding, like a secret being shared in a hushed whisper. It was a shallow, sheltered depression, perhaps no larger than a generous meadow, cupped by gently sloping hills that rose like protective arms around it. Enormous, ancient trees, their bark the color of moonlight on water and their leaves broad and translucent, formed a high, sheltering canopy through which the light from the sky beyond was filtered into a soft, verdant glow, bathing everything below in an atmosphere of perpetual peaceful twilight. In the heart of this gentle basin, nestled beside a particularly large tree whose lower branches swept almost to the ground like comforting gestures, stood a small dwelling. It was built of smooth silvered wood that seemed to have weathered many quiet seasons, and stones that were rounded and softened by time, their colors muted greens and grays, blending seamlessly with the landscape as if the veil itself had breathed it into existence. The roof was made of thick, overlapping layers of what looked like dried leaves, large and sturdy, their edges curled slightly, giving it the appearance of a sleeping forest creature. A thin plume of what Valery initially took to be smoke, but then realized was merely a wisp of mist, rose from a stone chimney, dissolving into the still air before it could ascend very far. The door, fashioned from a single broad plank of that same smooth silvered wood, was slightly ajar, a narrow sliver of inviting shadow beyond. There was no path leading to it, save for the slightly more trodden grass, as if few had come this way, and those who had trod lightly. Valery approached, her heart, which had beat with a quiet apprehension for so long, now slowing to a gentler, more even rhythm. She paused at the threshold, listening, but heard nothing save the profound, enveloping silence of the veil, a silence that felt not empty, but full of unspoken peace. Gently, she pushed the door further open. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of dried herbs and old, well-loved wood. A single room lay before her, its far wall dominated by a wide hearth of dark, smooth stone, cool to the touch, but holding the promise of warmth within its depths. A simple wooden table and two sturdy chairs, their surfaces polished by time and gentle use, stood in the center of the packed earth floor, which was covered in places by woven rush mats, their texture soft and yielding underfoot. A narrow bed, little more than a raised wooden frame with a thick, inviting mattress of what looked like densely packed dried grasses covered in a simple linen sheet was tucked into an alcove. Everything was impeccably clean, yet bore the unmistakable patina of age and gentle care, as if someone had only just stepped out, leaving behind an invitation for a weary traveler to rest. A wave of profound relief, so deep it was almost a physical sensation, washed over Valery. It was the feeling of a long journey ended, of a search expectedly fulfilled. Here, in this small, unassuming cottage, nestled within the embrace of the Vale of Sighing Petals, she felt an immediate and overwhelming sense of safety, a feeling of having come home to a place her spirit had always known, even if her feet had only just found the way. She let her worn traveling sack slip from her shoulder to the floor with a soft thud, the sound quickly absorbed by the quiet, and drew her first truly easy breath in what felt like a very long time. The light within the cottage was dim, filtered through a single small window set deep into the wall, its glass paned with what seemed to be thinly scraped horn, giving the incoming light a warm amber hue. Yet it was not gloomy. Rather, the dimness was comforting, a gentle reprieve from the brightness of the outside world, encouraging the eyes to soften and the mind to quiet. Valery ran a hand along the smooth, cool wood of the table, its surface worn into gentle undulations by countless hands and peaceful moments, and knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she would stay. For now, there was nothing more to do than to simply be, to allow the stillness of the veil to seep into her, to let the gentle quiet wash over her tired mind like a soothing balm. She sank onto one of the chairs, feeling the solid, comforting support of the smooth wood beneath her, and let her gaze drift around the simple room, each detail a small testament to peace, to a life lived slowly and with gentle intention. And as the last rays of the unseen sun, far above the canopy, cast their final diffused glow through the horn-paned window, Valery closed her eyes, feeling the profound embrace of the veil's gentle welcome. Chapter 2. Watching the luminous petals fall. Valery awoke to a silence so profound it seemed to have a texture like the softest, deepest velvet imaginable, pressing gently against her eardrums, a comforting weight that eased away the lingering echoes of troubled dreams. For a long moment, she lay quite still upon the surprisingly comfortable mattress of dried grasses, feeling the gentle support beneath her, the simple linen sheet cool against her skin. The light filtering through the small horn-paned window was a soft, diffuse gray, hinting at a day that was dawning slowly, unhurriedly, beyond the thick canopy of the veil. There was no sharp call of a bird to mark the morning, no sudden stir of activity, only this immense peaceful hush, as if the entire world were holding its breath in quiet reverence. Slowly she rose, her movements languid, her limbs feeling pleasantly heavy and rested. The cool, packed earth floor felt smooth beneath her bare feet. She padded to the window, her gaze drawn to the scene outside. The veil was bathed in that same soft, greenish gold light she had glimpsed upon her arrival, a luminescence that seemed to emanate from the very air itself, or perhaps from the giant unnamed trees that stood like ancient benevolent sentinels, their smooth, pale bark glowing faintly. Their leaves, broad and almost translucent, filtered the light from above, creating a dappled, ever-shifting pattern on the ground below, like sunlight seen through tranquil, shallow water. It was then she truly saw them, the petals, From the high branches of these magnificent trees, seemingly from every bough and twig, luminous, oversized petals were detaching themselves and drifting slowly, soundlessly toward the ground. They were of various soft hues, some a delicate rose, others a gentle lavender, many a creamy, pearlescent white, and they fell not in a flurry, but with a grace so deliberate it was almost a meditation to watch. There was no wind to hurry their descent, only the still air of the vale to cradle them as they spiraled and swayed, each one taking its own unhurried path to the earth. The ground beneath the trees was already carpeted in a thick, soft layer of these fallen wonders, a mosaic of gentle colors that seemed to glow with a faint inner light. She spent what felt like hours simply observing this silent, continuous cascade. It was the only significant movement in the entire vale, yet it was so gentle, so utterly without sound, that it deepened the profound stillness rather than disturbed it. Her mind, usually so quick to question and analyze, grew quiet, content to merely witness this gentle spectacle. The sheer abundance of the falling petals was wondrous, yet there was no sense of waste, no feeling of decay, only a continuous, serene offering. She noticed how they didn't crush or break upon landing, but settled softly, one upon another, creating a yielding, almost breathing carpet that muffled any sound of her own eventual footsteps when she ventured out. Later in the morning, after partaking of some simple dried fruit and nuts, she found in a small wooden box on the table, clearly left by the vale's unseen gentle steward, Valery decided to explore the immediate surroundings of her cottage. As she stepped outside, the air felt soft against her skin like a silken veil, carrying that same delicate fragrance of honeyed blossoms and damp earth. She took a few steps onto the carpet of fallen petals, and they whispered softly beneath her bare feet, a sound like the gentlest of sighs, releasing a fresh wave of their soothing scent. It was like walking on a cloud of fragrant light. It was near the base of the great tree that sheltered her cottage, its bark smooth and cool like river-washed stone, that she had her first encounter with one of the vale's inhabitants, a small creature no bigger than her two cupped hands, with fur the color of dried moss and wide, dark, gentle eyes, emerged cautiously from behind a smooth gray root. It was, perhaps, what one might call a vale vole, though it resembled no vole Valery had ever seen. It paused, regarding her with an innocent curiosity, its tiny nose twitching as it scented the air. Valery remained perfectly still, her heart softening at the sight of such unassuming gentleness. Slowly, very slowly, she reached into the pouch at her belt where she kept a few remaining wild berries and selected a small ripe one, its skin a deep, dusky purple. She held it out on the palm of her hand, keeping her movements minimal and unthreatening. The vale vole watched her for a long moment, its gaze unwavering. Then, with an almost imperceptible movement, it hopped a little closer, then closer still. Finally, with a delicate, trusting gesture, it took the berry from her palm, its soft, warm fur brushing against her skin for the briefest of moments, a touch as light as a falling feather. It nibbled the berry quickly, its tiny jaws working with surprising efficiency, then looked up at Valery again, as if in quiet thanks, before darting silently back into the shadows of the great tree's roots. Valery smiled, a gentle, peaceful expression that reached her eyes. It was a small interaction, simple and fleeting, yet it felt deeply significant, a quiet affirmation of the Vale's inherent kindness, its atmosphere of gentle trust. There were no predators here, no fear, only a shared existence held within the profound embrace of stillness and the endless silent rain of luminous petals. She felt a sense of connection, not just to the little creature, but to the Vale itself. A feeling of being welcomed, of belonging to this place where even the smallest of beings moved with a quiet grace. As the day wore on, the light within the Vale shifted almost imperceptibly, the soft greenish gold hues deepening slightly, the shadows beneath the trees lengthening in a slow, languid stretch. Valery found a smooth, sun-warmed, or perhaps Vale-warmed, for the source of its gentle heat was unclear, stone near her doorway, and sat, simply observing, listening to the profound silence, punctuated only by the shh of more petals settling around her. She felt the tension that had resided in her shoulders for so long begin to ease, her breath deepening, her mind content to drift as gently as the luminous blossoms swirling softly down from the ancient overarching boughs. Chapter 3. Immersed in Vale's Gentle Magic. The following days in the Vale of Sighing Petals unfolded with a serene and unhurried rhythm, each one a gentle echo of the last, yet filled with its own quiet discoveries. Valery found herself drawn by a gentle curiosity, a desire not to conquer or understand in any forceful way, but simply to experience the subtle wonders that lay hidden within the Vale's embrace. She would wander with no particular destination in mind, her bare feet padding softly on the ever-deepening carpet of luminous petals, their colors a gentle balm to her eyes, the soft rose, the tranquil lavender, the creamy moonlike white, all glowing faintly as if lit from within by a tiny sleeping star. One morning, following the sound so faint it was almost a feeling, a subtle vibration in the air like the distant hum of a contented bee, she came upon a small clearing she had not noticed before. Here, nestled amongst smooth gray stones draped with vibrant green moss, was a spring. The water that bubbled gently from the earth was as clear as spun glass. Yet it seemed to hold a soft internal luminescence, a gentle silver-blue light that pulsed with a soft, calming beat. It was not the light of the falling petals, but something inherent to the water itself, a quiet magic that felt ancient and deeply pure. The murmur it made as it trickled over the mossy stones and into a shallow, clear pool was like a whispered lullaby, a sound of infinite comfort and peace. Hesitantly at first, then with a growing sense of serene anticipation, Valery knelt by the edge of the pool. The air around the spring felt cooler, fresher, carrying a faint, clean scent like wet stones and crushed mint, mingled with the ever-present delicate fragrance of the honeyed blossoms from the lumen petals. She dipped her cupped hands into the water. It was cool, but not cold, with a smoothness that felt like liquid silk against her skin. As she brought the water to her lips, it tasted faintly sweet, with an undertone of fresh herbs and the clean minerality of the earth itself. More than the taste, however, was the sensation that followed a feeling of profound lightness, as if unseen burdens she hadn't even been aware of carrying were gently dissolving, flowing away from her with the water that trickled through her fingers. She spent a long while by the Whisper Spring, as she came to call it, sometimes sipping its restorative water, sometimes merely trailing her fingers through its shimmering surface, watching the way the light within it swirled and danced. The gentle hum that had led her here seemed to emanate from the very stones around the spring, a low, resonant frequency that you could feel more than hear, a vibration that seemed to soothe the deepest parts of her being, calming the subtle agitations of her mind until all that remained was a quiet, observant presence. She felt cleaner, lighter, not just physically, but in her spirit too, as if the spring had washed away layers of accumulated weariness. Another day, her meandering steps took her to a more secluded part of the vale, where the great lumen trees grew closer together, their branches intertwining overhead to create a canopy even denser, filtering the light into an even softer, more ethereal glow. Here, in the deeper shade, the ground was carpeted not only with the luminous petals, but also with thick, luxurious patches of what she named Empath-Moss. It was a vibrant, deep green, its texture incredibly soft and yielding, like the finest down imaginable. Drawn by its inviting appearance, Valery gently lay down upon one of these verdant cushions. The sensation was extraordinary. The Empath-Moss conformed perfectly to the contours of her body, providing a support that was both firm and incredibly gentle, as if she were being cradled in a loving embrace. A subtle, steady warmth radiated from it, seeping into her muscles, easing away any lingering stiffness, making her limbs feel pleasantly heavy and deeply relaxed. As she lay there, gazing up at the intricate lacework of leaves and the softly glowing petals drifting down, she felt a profound sense of peace, a feeling of being utterly safe and unconditionally accepted. It was as if the moss itself understood her unspoken weariness, her need for rest, and was offering its silent, comforting solace. Her breathing became slow and effortless, each inhalation drawing in the pure, sweet air of the vale, each exhalation releasing a little more of the world's quiet cares. In these hidden places, amongst the glowing waters of the whisper spring and the comforting embrace of the Empath-Moss, Valery began to feel a gentle mending within her. The constant, silent cascade of the lumen petals became the backdrop to her days, their soft light illuminating her quiet explorations, their delicate scent a constant reminder of the vale's gentle magic. She would often gather a few fallen petals, marveling at their intricate, vein-like patterns that glowed faintly in her palm, their texture like the softest kid skin, yet surprisingly resilient. They seemed to retain their soft luminescence for a long time, even when detached from the trees, tiny beacons of the vale's serene enchantment. Sometimes she would simply sit, leaning against the smooth, warm bark of one of the ancient trees, and watch the vale voles as they went about their quiet business, their movements quick and silent, their large, dark eyes reflecting the soft glow of the petals. They seemed to accept her presence now, occasionally venturing close enough to nibble on a seed or a fallen blossom near her feet, their trust a quiet gift. In these moments of shared stillness, Valery felt a deep connection to the life of the vale, a sense of being woven into its peaceful, harmonious tapestry. The lines of worry that had once etched themselves around her eyes began to soften, her expression taking on a new serenity, reflecting the profound calm of her surroundings. The richness of this sensory world here was almost overwhelming in its gentleness. The subtle shifts in the fragrance of the air, as different unseen blossoms perhaps opened in their turn. The way the diffused light changed from a pearly morning glow to a soft rose gold in the vale's equivalent of evening, the feel of the cool, smooth stones by the spring, and the yielding softness of the petal-strewn earth underfoot, all these things became her focus. Her awareness, once turned outwards to the demands of a busier world, now rested wholly in the present moment, absorbed by the simple, profound beauty that surrounded her. Chapter 4. Cultivating profound inner stillness. As days melted into a gentle rhythm marked only by the subtle shifts in the Vale's perpetual soft light and the slow accumulation of luminous petals, Valery found herself drawn to a particular spot, a sanctuary within the sanctuary. It was beneath the vast, spreading branches of one of the oldest lumen trees, its trunk so wide it would have taken 3 of her to encircle it, its bark, like smooth, pale jade, warm to the touch as if with an inner, gentle fire. Here, the falling petals seemed to drift down in a particularly slow and graceful dance, creating a deep, soft bed of fragrant light around the tree's base. This became her place of quiet contemplation, her haven for simply being. She would spend long, unmeasured hours there, sometimes sitting with her back against the warm, comforting solidity of the ancient trunk, sometimes lying nestled in the yielding cushion of petals, gazing up through the intricate lacework of leaves. The constant, silent cascade of rose, lavender, and creamy white became a mesmerizing, living tapestry. There was a profound peace in watching their soundless descent, each petal a tiny messenger of tranquility, detaching from the bough with a gentle sigh only the heart could hear, and spiraling, swaying, drifting down to join its companions on the forest floor. It was a continuous, serene offering, a reminder of the beauty in letting go, in gentle release. Her own thoughts, which in the world beyond had often been a restless flurry, began to slow, to quieten. At first, they would still surface small worries, faded memories, fleeting anxieties, but here, in the profound stillness of the Vale, they seemed to lose their sharp edges, their urgency. Like the petals themselves, they would drift into her awareness, linger for a moment, and then, without struggle or resistance, float away, dissolving into the vast, peaceful quiet. She learned not to grasp at them, not to fight them, but to simply observe their passage with a gentle, detached curiosity, much like she observed the falling blossoms. There were times when she would close her eyes, not to sleep, but to immerse herself more deeply in the other senses of the Vale. The air, always soft and still, carried the constant, delicate perfume of the lumen petals, that comforting blend of warm milk, honeyed blossoms, and a hint of something uniquely arboreal, like ancient wood and fresh rain. Beneath this, she could sometimes discern the fainter, cleaner scent of the whisper spring, or the rich, loamy fragrance of the earth where the petals had long since dissolved and returned their essence to the soil. The silence was not an absence of sound, but a presence itself, a deep, velvety quietude that held within it the almost inaudible shh of petals settling, the faint, resonant hum of the earth, and the slow, even rhythm of her own peaceful breathing. In this state of deep sensory immersion, Valery began to experience a profound inner stillness. The knot of weariness that had been lodged so tightly within her chest for so long began to unfurl slowly, tenderly, like a fern frond reaching for a gentle light. She felt a sense of acceptance wash over her, an acceptance of herself, of the quiet rhythm of her days, of the simple beauty that surrounded her, There was no need to strive, no need to achieve, no need to be anything other than what she was in that moment, a quiet observer, a grateful recipient of the Vale's profound peace, the gentle weight of the air, the soft support of the petals beneath her, the steady warmth of the ancient tree against her back. All these things conspired to create a feeling of being utterly held, completely secure. Sometimes a Vale vole, perhaps the very same one she had first befriended, would venture close, its dark, gentle eyes regarding her with calm curiosity before it resumed its quiet foraging amongst the petals. Valery would watch its delicate movements, the tiny twitch of its nose, the soft fall of its paws, and feel a sense of kinship with this small, unassuming life. There was a wisdom in its simplicity, in its contented existence within the Vale's embrace, a wisdom that Valery was slowly, gently absorbing into her own being. The Vale taught not through words or lessons, but through its very essence, through its constant, unwavering demonstration of peace. She noticed the subtle ways her body had begun to relax without her conscious effort. Her shoulders, once perpetually tensed, now rested softly. Her jaw, often clenched, felt loose and easy. Her breath, which had sometimes been shallow and quick, now flowed deeply and calmly, rising and falling with the gentle rhythm of the Vale itself. These were not changes she had forced, but rather gentle unfoldings that occurred naturally as she steeped herself in the restorative atmosphere of this magical place. The Empath-Moss, when she rested upon it, seemed to draw out any remaining vestiges of tension, leaving her feeling wonderfully light and serenely grounded. The concept of time, as the outside world measured it, became increasingly irrelevant. Days were marked by the slow journey of the diffused light across the Vale, from the pearly glow that signaled its gentle awakening to the deeper rose-tinted luminescence that heralded its quiet descent into a night that was never truly dark, thanks to the ceaseless glow of the petals. There were no clocks, no calendars, only the natural, unhurried cadence of the Vale. And in this timelessness, Valery found a profound freedom, a release from the tyranny of schedules and expectations, allowing her to simply exist, to be fully present in each unfolding, peaceful moment. The inner stillness she cultivated beneath the old lumen tree began to permeate all her quiet activities, whether she was sipping the cool, glowing water from the whisper spring, tracing the delicate, luminous veins on a fallen petal, or simply walking through the soft, whispering drifts of blossoms. She carried this sense of profound calm within her. It was as if the Vale's own serene breath had become her breath, its quiet heartbeat her own. The world outside, with its gentle but persistent hums, felt very far away, a half-forgotten dream from which she had awakened into this reality of deep, abiding peace. Chapter 5. Carrying the Vale's peace within. There came a morning indistinguishable from any other in its gentle unfolding of soft light and the silent cascade of petals, when Valery awoke with a new sensation, a feeling of quiet fullness, a sense of serene completion. It was not a thought, nor a decision made with conscious effort, but rather a gentle stirring from within, as subtle and natural as the Vale's own slow rhythms. The weariness that had led her to this hidden sanctuary had dissolved, replaced by a deep, resonant calm that seemed to have settled into the very marrow of her bones. The Vale had offered its healing, and her spirit, now mended and refreshed, felt a quiet readiness, not for an ending, but for a gentle continuation. She spent that day in quiet farewell, though it felt less like a goodbye and more like an absorption of the Vale's essence into her being. She visited the Whisper Spring one last time, cupping its cool, luminous water in her hands, feeling its serene lightness become a part of her. She ran her fingers over the smooth, ancient stones, warmed by an unseen source, and felt their steadfast, peaceful energy. She lay for a while upon a bed of Empath-Moss, allowing its gentle, understanding warmth to infuse her, a final comforting embrace. The silent fall of the lumen petals continued, a constant, beautiful reminder of the peace she had found, their soft light and delicate fragrance now deeply imprinted upon her senses. There was no sadness in her heart, only a profound and quiet gratitude. The Vale of Sighing Petals had been more than a refuge. It had been a gentle teacher, a place of profound restoration. It had shown her the beauty of stillness, the solace in simplicity, and the deep, unwavering peace that can be found when one truly listens to the quiet whispers of the natural world and to the stillness within oneself. She gathered a single, perfectly formed lumen petal, its creamy white surface glowing softly in her palm, its texture like the finest silk. This she would carry with her, a tangible reminder of the Vale's gentle magic. As the soft, diffused light of the Vale began to deepen into its evening hues of rose and gentle lavender, Valery stood at the entrance to the small silvered wood cottage that had been her haven. She touched its smooth, weathered door with a gentle hand, a silent thank you for its shelter and its peace. She left it as she had found it, quietly welcoming, ready for another weary soul who might one day stumble upon this hidden path, seeking solace. Her few belongings were easily gathered, for she had brought little and needed even less in this place of simple abundance. With the single luminous petal carefully tucked into a soft pouch, she turned towards the winding path that led out of the Vale. Each step was unhurried, mindful. As she ascended, the air gradually lost some of its profound softness. The unique fragrance of the lumen petals began to fade, replaced by the more familiar sense of the outer world, the smell of dry grass, of distant pines, of the open sky. The profound hush of the Vale slowly gave way to the gentle sounds of the wider landscape, the distant chirping of crickets, the sigh of a gentle breeze rustling through ordinary leaves, sounds that now seemed less like an intrusion and more like the gentle hum of a world quietly living. When she finally emerged from the subtle parting in the grasses and stood once more upon the low rolling hills, the change was noticeable yet not jarring. The light of the setting sun, though more direct than the Vale's diffused glow, seemed softer to her eyes than she remembered. The colors of the landscape, the golds, the browns, the distant blues of the hazy horizon appeared richer, yet more gentle. The world outside the Vale, which had once felt filled with a low, persistent hum that frayed her nerves, now seemed to possess a quieter, more harmonious song. It was as if the Vale had tuned her senses to a finer, more peaceful frequency. She paused, turning back for a moment to look at the place where the hidden entrance to the Vale lay, though now it was indistinguishable from the surrounding hillside. She knew it was there, a secret haven of profound peace, and that knowledge itself was a comfort. She carried its stillness within her, a quiet pool of serenity that no outer murmur could easily disturb. The gentle weight of the air in her lungs felt effortless. Her shoulders remained soft and relaxed, and a gentle, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. Valery continued her journey, not with the weariness of before, but with a newfound lightness in her step and a deep, abiding peace in her heart. The world unfolded before her, and she met it not with apprehension, but with a quiet openness, an acceptance learned in the vale where stillness breathes and luminous petals fall like silent blessings. The peace of the vale was not left behind. It was integrated, a soft, glowing ember carried carefully within her soul, ready to warm her from the inside, a reminder that even in a world of gentle hums, profound stillness could always be found if one only remembered to listen for its quiet call. And as she walked, the single petal in her pouch pulsed with a faint, reassuring glow, a whisper of the tranquility she would forever carry. The peace of the vale was not left behind. It was integrated, a soft, glowing ember carried carefully within her soul, ready to warm her from the inside, a reminder that even in a world of gentle hums, profound stillness could always be found if one only remembered to listen for its quiet call. And as she walked, the single petal in her pouch pulsed with a faint, reassuring glow, a whisper of the tranquility she would forever carry.